The asteroid field was a graveyard of broken dreams, shattered hulks of human ships frozen in the endless black, silent monuments to humanity's near extinction. Area Chen's stolen hegemony scout ship wove between the massive rock formations, her cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the vessel's navigation systems. Each movement was a calculated dance, milliseconds away from detection. Klaxon alarms screamed inside her head, a neural overlay showing the pursuing Zarkon hunter vessels. 3 of them, sleek predators of alien technology that made human engineering look like primitive stone tools. Their quantum drive signatures cut through space like razor-sharp threads, hunting her with merciless precision. The data crystal pressed against her chest, secured beneath a reinforced tactical vest. Decades of human research, the last hope of a nearly annihilated species, contained in a fragment smaller than her palm. Its weight was more than physical. It was the culmination of humanity's most desperate and brilliant minds. Aria's left eye, a complex quantum processing implant, calculated escape trajectories faster than any organic brain could comprehend. Scars traced her face and visible skin, each one a story of survival, of battles fought when humanity was pushed to the very edge of existence. The cybernetic augmentations weren't just improvements. They were a testament to human adaptation, a biological middle finger to the species that had tried to exterminate them. Incoming quantum pulse, her neural interface warned. A Zarkon tracking beam would disable most ships instantly, but this vessel was different. Stripped from a high-priority hegemony research ship, it carried modifications that made it a ghost in their own systems. Aria's fingers, part organic, part quantum-responsive synthetic material, danced across the control interface. She wasn't just piloting. She was becoming the ship. Memories flashed. The fall of Earth's last major colony, the massacre at Nova Station, the years of running, hiding, fighting. The first hunter vessel began its attack run. Its weapon systems were a marvel of alien engineering, capable of dismantling entire space stations with a single pulse. But Aria had something they didn't understand: human desperation, human ingenuity. A micro jump between 2 massive asteroids. The ship's quantum drive flickered, a technique that would have torn apart any standard vessel. But this was no standard vessel, and Aria was no standard pilot. The hunters lost their lock, momentarily confused by the impossible maneuver. Her comm system crackled, an encrypted burst transmission, a message from the last human sanctuary, New Terra. Just 2 words: proceed. Payload. The payload. The data crystal. Humanity's last weapon. The asteroid field began to thin. Open space approached. The most dangerous moment of any escape. 2 hunter vessels still pursued, their quantum cannons charging. Each second was a lifetime. Each movement a calculation between survival and extinction. Aria Chen allowed herself the briefest moment of a smile. They had no idea what was coming. The last human hope was about to change everything. The heart of New Terra pulsed with a quiet intensity, a mobile asteroid base that was humanity's last sanctuary. Massive internal caverns housed research facilities that defied imagination, each section a testament to human survival and innovation. At the center of it all stood the war room, where the Singularity Protocol team assembled. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez adjusted the quantum stabilizers on his prosthetic arm, the advanced mechanism a mechanical symphony of human engineering. Where once the limb would have been a crude replacement, it was now a marvel of adaptive technology, more versatile and powerful than his original organic limb. The arm itself was a metaphor for humanity's current condition: broken, rebuilt, and ultimately stronger. Aria's inbound, Zara Okoye announced, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with living data. Her dark skin was etched with subtle neural link tattoos, each line a connection to the most advanced communication network humanity had ever created. Once a lead neural network engineer for the African Continental Defense Force, she had watched her entire research team vanish during the hegemony's systematic purge of human technological centers. Jin Park looked up from his quantum computing array, a holographic representation of complex mathematical models spinning around him like a digital galaxy. At just 27, he was the youngest member of the team, and possibly the most brilliant. His parents had been refugees, murdered in a hegemony pacification campaign that had reduced entire human settlements to radioactive dust. Each calculation, each line of code was both an act of scientific pursuit and a silent rebellion. The door hissed open. Area Chen entered, the data crystal secured in a quantum-locked containment unit. Her arrival was like a sudden electric charge. The room's ambient energy shifted, becoming more focused, more dangerous. "Status?" she asked, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's final hope. Marcus was the first to respond. "The quantum infiltration algorithm is 94.7% complete. We've identified 17 critical communication nodes in the hegemony's primary network." His prosthetic arm projected a holographic representation of the alien communication grid, a complex web of quantum entanglements that had maintained galactic control for millennia. Zara interrupted, her voice tight with barely contained excitement. "It's not just about breaking their network. We're going to rewrite it completely." Jin's fingers flew across his interface. The mathematical model suggests a cascading transformation. Not destruction, evolution. We're not just fighting. We're fundamentally changing the rules of galactic communication. The room fell silent. Each of them understood the magnitude of what they were attempting. This was more than a weapon. This was humanity's final statement to a universe that had tried to erase them. Area placed the data crystal into a central processing unit. The device seemed to breathe, quantum particles dancing around its surface like a living thing. Everything we are, everything we've lost, it all comes down to this moment. Marcus looked at the team, a group that represented the last remnants of human technological brilliance. Survivors, innovators, the final architects of humanity's revenge and resurrection. "Let's remind the galaxy," he said quietly, "why they should never underestimate us." The Singularity Protocol waited, ready to change everything. The simulation chamber hummed with potential energy, quantum particles dancing in impossible patterns around Jin Park's workstation. Holographic displays flickered with complex mathematical models that would have driven most minds to madness. But not Jin's. He'd been working for 72 consecutive hours, sustained by a cocktail of neural-enhancing compounds and an obsession that ran deeper than mere scientific curiosity. Each line of code was a weapon, each algorithm a strike against the civilization that had murdered his family. "Got you," Jin whispered. The breakthrough came from an almost invisible anomaly, a quantum entanglement pattern so subtle that generations of alien scientists had overlooked it. Where the hegemony saw a perfect communication network, Jin saw a fundamental flaw, a microscopic vulnerability that could be exploited. Zara approached, her neural link tattoos pulsing with synchronized data streams. "Talk to me," she demanded, her eyes scanning the holographic displays. Jin pointed to a nearly imperceptible quantum oscillation. "See this? It's not a bug. It's a feature the hegemony doesn't even know exists." His fingers moved with surgical precision, expanding the molecular representation. Their entire communication grid is built on a quantum entanglement protocol that assumes perfect symmetry, but nothing is truly perfect. Across the chamber, Marcus Rodriguez studied the data, his prosthetic arm interfacing directly with the research systems. Years of combat experience had taught him that every system has a weakness, and every weakness can be a weapon. "It's like a microscopic fracture in a seemingly perfect crystal," Marcus murmured. "Small enough to be invisible, but potentially capable of shattering the entire structure." Area Chen watched from the observation deck, her cybernetic eye processing the data at speeds that would have overwhelmed an organic brain. The team had been working toward this moment for years, a way to turn the hegemony's technological superiority into its greatest vulnerability. The implications were staggering. The quantum communication network wasn't just a communication system. It was the nervous system of the entire galactic power structure. If they could exploit this fracture, they wouldn't just be sending a message. They'd be fundamentally rewriting the rules of galactic communication. Jin's fingers flew across the interface. I can create a quantum cascade. It won't destroy their network. It'll transform it. Imagine a virus that doesn't kill the host, but rewrites its entire genetic code. Zara leaned in, her breath catching. A systemic reboot of the entire galactic communication infrastructure. More than that, Jin replied, a rare smile crossing his usually serious face. A complete reset. Marcus stepped forward, his prosthetic arm generating additional holographic displays. We're not just creating a weapon. We're designing a revolution. Aria's voice cut through the excitement. Prepare for final simulation. We get one shot at this. The team exchanged looks, not of fear, but of absolute determination. Survivors. Innovators. The last hope of a species that refused to be erased. The quantum simulation began, a universe of possibilities condensing into a single, perfect moment of potential. Humanity's ultimate Trojan horse was about to be unleashed. The deployment room was a cathedral of controlled chaos. Massive quantum interfaces lined the walls, each display a window into a complex, living network of information. Aria Chen stood at the center, her body rigid with anticipation. Cybernetic eye scanning data streams faster than any organic mind could comprehend. Quantum anchors locked, Zara announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Neural link tattoos pulsed along her arms, connecting her directly to the most advanced communication system humanity had ever created. Jin Park's fingers hovered over the primary activation interface. Each movement was calculated, precise, the result of years of preparation, of survival, of hope compressed into a single moment. His display showed a quantum cascade so complex it bordered on sentience, a digital weapon that was more evolution than destruction. Initiating primary infiltration sequence, Jin called out. Nothing happened. At least, nothing that would be visible to the naked eye, or even most advanced scanning systems. The Singularity Protocol began its work with the subtlety of a whisper, penetrating the hegemony's quantum communication network like water seeping through microscopic cracks. Marcus Rodriguez monitored the external communication bands, his prosthetic arm interfacing with multiple tracking systems. No immediate defensive response, he reported. They have no idea we've begun. The first signs were so minimal they could have been mistaken for statistical anomalies. A communication relay here, a data transfer there. Tiny adjustments that would seem random to anyone not watching with the most precise instruments. But this was no random occurrence. Deep within the hegemony's most secure communication networks, the Singularity Protocol began its true work. It wasn't destroying the network, it was rewriting it. Where once there were rigid hierarchies and controlled information flows, new pathways began to emerge. Like water finding its way through stone, the protocol created connections that had never existed before. Quantum cascade at 12.7%. Zara called out. Her voice carried a hint of wonder. They were doing something no species had ever attempted, not just attacking a communication network, but fundamentally reimagining how information could flow. Aria watched the displays, her breathing measured, controlled. Years of preparation, of survival, of lost colonies and murdered friends, all of it compressed into this moment. Look, Jin suddenly said, his voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. On one of the secondary displays, a communication channel opened between two star systems that had never been directly connected. Not through official channels, not through diplomatic routes, but through a completely new pathway that the Singularity Protocol had created. Marcus let out a low whistle. It's not just infiltrating. It's liberating. The hegemony's communication network began to change. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Firewalls dissolved. Information barriers crumbled. Connections formed between species that had been isolated for millennia. Quantum cascade at 47.3%. Zara reported, her voice trembling slightly. They weren't just deploying a weapon. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of galactic communication. Humanity's final hope was becoming something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The first true sign of transformation came from an unlikely source. On the mining colony of Risa Prime, a communication terminal flickered to life with unprecedented access. Krell, a low-ranking ore processor from the Vostar species, a race enslaved by the hegemony for thousands of generations, stared in disbelief as restricted information streams began to pour through. Historical records, communication logs, suppressed scientific research, entire libraries of knowledge that had been hidden from his species for millennia now danced across the screen. His trembling fingers touched the interface, and for the first time in his life, Krell understood the true extent of his people's oppression. In the new Terra control room, Zara watched the cascading effects with a mixture of scientific fascination and human vengeance. "It's spreading faster than our initial models predicted," she announced, holographic displays showing a complex web of newly formed communication pathways. Jin Park leaned forward, quantum calculations spinning around him like a digital galaxy. "We're not just breaking their network," he said quietly. "We're democratizing information." The Singularity Protocol wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of liberation. Across dozens of star systems, communication barriers began to dissolve. Enslaved species discovered the true histories of their subjugation. Isolated scientific communities found themselves suddenly connected. Information that had been carefully controlled for millennia now flowed like an unstoppable river. On a diplomatic station near the galactic core, a hegemony communication administrator watched in growing horror as classified records began to leak. Not through any traditional breach, but through quantum pathways that seemed to emerge from nowhere, defying every known law of information transfer. "This is impossible," the administrator muttered, fingers flying across increasingly ineffective control interfaces. But it was happening. Marcus Rodriguez studied the emerging patterns, his prosthetic arm interfacing with multiple tracking systems. "We're not just attacking their network," he said to Aria. "We're fundamentally restructuring how information can exist." Aria watched the displays, her cybernetic eye processing millions of data points per second. Each new connection was a blow against the system that had tried to exterminate humanity. Each dissolved barrier a testament to human resilience. The most surprising effect wasn't the technological breach. It was the human connection. Species that had been isolated, oppressed, and controlled for generations suddenly found themselves with unprecedented access. Scientific communities that had been kept apart now shared research. Cultural archives long suppressed began to reconnect lost histories. Quantum cascade at 76.4%, Zara reported, her voice a mix of wonder and anticipation. On 100 worlds, in thousands of communication centers, beings looked at their interfaces and saw something they'd never experienced before: unfiltered truth. The hegemony's carefully constructed reality was crumbling, replaced by something far more complex, far more alive. Humanity's final weapon wasn't destroying civilization. It was setting it free. "We're changing everything," Jin whispered, watching the cascading revolution unfold. And they were just getting started. The Hegemony High Council convened an emergency session, their chamber a testament to millennia of unchallenged power. Holographic displays flickered with increasing desperation, each new report more alarming than the last. High Strategist Vornak, a being of pure computational logic, struggled to process the impossible data before him. The communication networks, the very backbone of galactic control, were transforming in ways that defied every known scientific principle. "This is not a breach," one council member hissed, mandibles clicking with barely contained panic. "This is a complete systemic reconstruction." The most terrifying aspect was the unpredictability. Their most advanced AI systems began to behave in ways that bordered on rebellion. Communication channels that had been tightly controlled for generations now sparked with unprecedented freedom. Encrypted databases dissolved. Classified archives became public. The carefully constructed reality of galactic control was unraveling. In the new Terra control room, Area Chen watched the hegemony's response with a cold, calculated intensity. "They're trying to isolate the infection," she observed, her cybernetic eye tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. Jin Park's fingers danced across his quantum interface. "They can't. The Singularity Protocol isn't just a program. It's a living system of information transfer." His voice carried a hint of wonder. What they had created was beyond a mere weapon. It was a form of technological evolution. Across the galaxy, the consequences multiplied. On a border research station, a hegemony scientist discovered her entire life's work, decades of suppressed research, was now freely accessible. Theories that had been brutally censored now stood in the light of day. The emotional impact was devastating and liberating. Zora monitored the external communication bands. "They're launching a desperate counterattack," she reported. "But every attempt to shut down the network is just accelerating its transformation." The hegemony's response was predictably brutal. Military communication channels activated. Entire star systems went into lockdown. But the Singularity Protocol had already rewritten the fundamental rules of their existence. Marcus Rodriguez studied the emerging patterns. "They're fighting the last war," he muttered. "We've already changed the nature of conflict itself." High strategist Vornak's computational mind began to break down. The logical systems that had controlled galactic civilization for millennia simply could not process the level of systemic change happening around them. It was like watching a rigid crystal suddenly become fluid, reshaping itself in real time. "We are losing control," Vornak finally admitted, a statement that would have been unthinkable moments before. The panic was spreading, not just among the hegemony's leadership, but throughout the entire galactic power structure. Species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly found themselves with unprecedented access to information, to communication, to possibility. In the new Terra control room, Aria allowed herself the briefest moment of a smile. "We're not just fighting," she said quietly. "We're evolving." The Singularity Protocol continued its work, a silent revolution that was rewriting the very fabric of galactic civilization. Humanity's last weapon was proving to be something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined, a tool of complete, systemic transformation. The galaxy would never be the same again. The transformation accelerated beyond even the Singularity Protocol team's wildest predictions. On the distant research colony of Nexus Prime, Dr. Lyric Thax, a xenobiologist from a species long suppressed by the hegemony, discovered something extraordinary. The newly liberated communication networks revealed decades of stolen research, hidden collaborations, and scientific breakthroughs that had been deliberately isolated. Her trembling hands accessed archives that contained decades of forbidden knowledge. Entire fields of scientific research, deliberately fragmented to prevent any single species from gaining too much understanding, now lay open like a vast, interconnected tapestry of discovery. In the new Terra control room, Aria Chen watched the cascading effects with a mixture of scientific fascination and profound uncertainty. "We're creating something we never intended," she murmured. Jin Park's quantum displays show the expanding network of connections, each new pathway a revolution in itself. "It's not just information transfer," he explained. "We're fundamentally restructuring how different species can communicate, collaborate, understand each other." The Singularity Protocol had become something far more complex than a weapon. It was a catalyst for galactic transformation. Suppressed species began to connect. Isolated scientific communities found themselves suddenly sharing centuries of accumulated knowledge. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for millennia began to dissolve, replaced by something more fluid, more alive. Marcus Rodriguez tracked the emerging patterns, his prosthetic arm interfacing with multiple monitoring systems. "We're witnessing the birth of a new type of civilization," he said quietly. "One not defined by control, but by connection." Zora's neural link tattoos pulsed with incoming data streams. "The protocol is adapting," she reported. "It's learning, evolving beyond our original programming." The most shocking revelations came from the margins of galactic society. Species that had been considered primitive suddenly gained access to technological and scientific archives that rewrote their understanding of their own history. Entire cultural narratives were being reconstructed in real time. On 100 worlds, beings looked at their interfaces and saw something they'd never experienced before. Unfiltered truth. The hegemony's carefully constructed reality was crumbling, replaced by something far more complex, far more alive. What had begun as a human survival strategy was transforming into a comprehensive reset of galactic civilization. "We're not just changing information," Aria realized. "We're changing consciousness itself." The protocol continued its work, a silent revolution that was rewriting the very fabric of galactic communication. Technological barriers dissolved. Cultural isolation ended. The very concept of centralized control was becoming obsolete. Jin's quantum displays showed something unprecedented, a living network of information that seemed to be developing its own form of emergent intelligence. "It's not just connecting," he said, voice filled with a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "It's creating something entirely new." Humanity's last weapon had become something far more dangerous and beautiful than a mere tool of revenge. It was becoming a new way of existing. As the Singularity Protocol continued its work, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. What had started as humanity's desperate attempt to survive was now reshaping the very nature of civilization itself. 47 standard galactic cycles after the initial deployment, Aria Chen stood at the observation deck of New Terra, watching a universe fundamentally transformed. The Singularity Protocol had become something far beyond their original conception. What began as a desperate weapon of survival had evolved into a living network of connection, understanding, and shared potential. The rigid structures of the hegemony were gone, replaced by something more fluid, more alive. Her cybernetic eye scanned the incoming data streams, no longer a tool of survival, but a window into a new form of galactic existence. Beside her, the original team watched the unfolding reality they had created. Jin Park's quantum displays showed intricate patterns of communication that defied previous scientific understanding. Species that had been isolated for millennia now shared research, cultural insights, technological breakthroughs. The very concept of centralized control had become obsolete. "We didn't just change a communication network," Marcus Rodriguez observed, his prosthetic arm interfacing with multiple tracking systems. "We rewrote the fundamental way civilizations interact." Zora's neural link tattoos pulsed with incoming data, showing the emergence of collaborative scientific endeavors that would have been impossible under the hegemony's control. Research stations that were once isolated now worked on complex problems together, sharing insights across previously impenetrable barriers. A transmission arrived from Krell, the Vostar ore processor, who had been one of the first to experience the protocol's liberation. Now a lead coordinator for an interspecies research initiative, he represented the profound change they had initiated. "Humanity gave us more than information," the message read. "You gave us the ability to understand each other." Aria remembered the cost: the destroyed colonies, the murdered families, the near extinction of their species. This was more than revenge. This was transformation. The galaxy had become something entirely new, not through conquest, but through connection. Not through destruction, but through understanding. "We were never just fighting to survive," Aria said quietly. "We were fighting to show what was possible." Jin's displays showed something extraordinary, an emergent form of collective intelligence that was developing across the liberated communication networks. It wasn't a centralized system, but a living, breathing ecosystem of shared knowledge and potential. Marcus studied the patterns. "We created a new form of civilization," he marveled. "One defined by connection rather than control." Zora pointed to a developing research project. Species that had been enemies now working together on challenges that would have been unimaginable under the old system. Medical breakthroughs, technological innovations, cultural exchanges. The hegemony was gone. But something far more complex had taken its place. Area Chen looked out at the stars, no longer a battlefield, but a canvas of infinite potential. Humanity's last weapon had become its greatest gift. They had not just survived. They had shown the galaxy a new way of existing. "We're not done," she said to her team. "We're just beginning." The universe listened, transformed, waiting.